Do you want to be ahead of the game for the latest in arts, music, cuisine, and entertainment across the Middle East's most dynamic capital cities? Al Monitor is proud to launch our City Pulse newsletters, focused exclusively on local news, starting in Riyadh, Dubai, Istanbul, and Doha. Each week, our on-the-ground writers in these cities cover the latest cultural happenings and trends, so you have everything you need to know for the best local experiences. To subscribe for free, go to almonitor.com, that's al-monitor.com, and sign up on our newsletter page.
Welcome back to the Al Monitor Brief. I'm Adam Lucente. Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Thursday that he is in favor of the recent US-Ukraine ceasefire deal proposed in Saudi Arabia, but said he wants to discuss the matter with US President Donald Trump before moving forward. Regardless of how the deal plays out, recent events have shown Saudi Arabia as well as the UAE taking on increasing importance in deliberations surrounding the war. The US and Ukraine agreed to a 30-day ceasefire proposal for the war during talks in Riyadh on Tuesday. A day earlier, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was in Saudi Arabia for talks with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The kingdom also hosted US-Russia talks in February. The UAE is seeking a role of its own with regards to the war. Abu Dhabi hosted Zelensky and signed a bilateral trade deal with Ukraine last month. My guest this week is Al Monitor's Gulf correspondent, Jennifer Gnana. Jennifer offers her take on why Saudi Arabia is so keen to help resolve the Ukraine crisis, how the UAE views the Saudi efforts, and the reasons behind the Gulf's increasing importance in relation to the war. Hope you enjoy. Jennifer, welcome back to the Al Monitor Brief.
Thank you.
Jennifer, why is the Gulf increasingly becoming a center for talks related to the Ukraine war?
I think one of the important reasons why these discussions, which would have happened somewhere closer to Europe or would have happened in Europe, are being held in the Gulf is because it has become increasingly challenging for Russian officials to meet in Europe. There's, an arrest warrant for Putin, even though Putin himself did not attend these talks. If there were ceasefire talks or if there were more high-level talks, the Gulf and Saudi Arabia proved to be a very neutral space to host these talks. And Saudi Arabia and the UAE both have very good relations with Russia. They're both members of the supergroup called OPEC Plus, and Russia and Saudi Arabia coordinate very closely when it comes to the oil markets. There are also significant investments between Russia and the UAE and also Saudi Arabia. So there are long-standing ties between these countries. Saudi Arabia is also incredibly close to the Trump administration. Trump has several personal relationships with Saudi businessmen and also with the Saudi leadership. So Saudi Arabia has emerged as a sort of mediator between Russia and Ukraine, and the UAE also has played its part. Like, both countries have mediated when it comes to prisoner exchanges. They've proven to be a good intermediary at a time when the European Union has struggled to get a foot in and struggled to communicate with Trump. The Gulf states, and particularly Saudi Arabia, with hosting both Russia and Ukrainian officials, has proven to be a good buffer zone between the two.
And what is Saudi Arabia hoping to get out of hosting Ukrainian President Zelensky as well as the US-Ukraine talk?
For Saudi Arabia, this positions them as a leader in terms of high-level talks. They've always looked to mediate when it comes to big international conflicts. They are playing a role when it comes to Syria. But in terms of a more international event or an international conflict, this positions them as one of the people that I spoke to for an article that I wrote. It makes them look more statesman-like at a time when there are several key actors within the international system that are not behaving that way, that are not behaving in a very rational way, seemingly. And Saudi Arabia, on the other hand, looks like it has strong leadership and can take a very strong position and can allow for talks between big powers in the world. So I think it's seen as a big soft power win for them. And also, the other opportunity is Saudi Arabia could potentially see itself playing maybe more of a financial or reconstruction role in Ukraine. They haven't explicitly said that. They did have a statement with Zelensky that said that they're looking to boost trade volumes, but they haven't really got into the exact terms of that. Saudi commentators that I spoke to said they would likely prioritize several things that are happening within Saudi Arabia. The Vision 2030 deadline is closed. There are big domestic projects they have to pay attention to. But at the same time, you have the US saying they're not willing to commit to, aid, military aid. That's something that Saudi Arabia is unlikely to go into. But in terms of commitment towards the mineral sector, which is huge for Saudi Arabia, they have their own plans internally to grow the mineral sector. There could be opportunities there to cooperate closely with Ukraine. So I think this is an opportunity for them to grow their stature internationally, and they're really looking to maximize what they can get out of it.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with Jennifer Gnana after this short break.
Today's transformation of the Middle East is at the center of global geopolitics. Whether you're an analyst, diplomat, executive, or academic, you need the best reporting and analysis to understand what's really happening on the ground and what it means for the world. Al Monitor is the award-winning independent leader in Middle East news. From Riyadh to Beirut, Abu Dhabi to Doha, and Baghdad to Tehran, our team of over 100 expert journalists report daily on the top stories driving the regional trends. Download our mobile app and subscribe to Al Monitor to follow what leaders and decision makers are reading every day. Go to almonitor.com, that's AL-MONITOR.com, and use promo code POD25, POD25 for a discount.
Okay, we're back. Jennifer, you mentioned the UAE's role in all this as well, especially thinking about, their mediation and including on the prisoners swaps between Ukraine and Russia. But how does the UAE view Saudi Arabia's recent increased efforts to mediate on this war?
The UAE was quite keen to host these talks when it was first floated, when Trump suggested these talks could be held in the Middle East. There was a lot of effort by the UAE to actually host these talks in Abu Dhabi. I mean, they've been looking for a good mediating role within the region. And so I think when Zelensky visited the UAE ahead of his earlier planned visit to Riyadh, which he eventually canceled, they did make a big gesture to him, which was he came away with a trade deal. It's known as CEPA, which is Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. It's a kind of trade deal that the UAE has signed with a number of countries. It's really sought after, but Zelensky went away with that on his final day in February when he visited the UAE. So that was sort of a grand gesture to show the region and the world that the UAE was willing to do more when it came to the Ukraine conflict, that it was willing to help. And in terms of actual trade volumes and trade ties, the UAE does act as a transit hub for Ukrainian grain. This is something that I talk about in my piece. While it is not an actual big market for Ukrainian goods, they do act as a transit hub for Ukrainian grain that goes to other parts of the world, parts of the Middle East, Africa. So they do have an economic stake in this, and I believe the UAE would like to play a bigger role in reconstruction if there were opportunities. So they did see Zelensky's cancellation as perhaps, an opportunity to also sort of weigh in into the conflict.
Jennifer, thanks a lot for your time, and we look forward to more of your reporting on all things Russia, Ukraine, and the Gulf.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Al Monitor Brief. Be sure to follow Al Monitor for more on the stories impacting the Middle East. Until next time, I'm Adam Lucente.